That's it? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you. It is Monday, March 8th, 2021. I'd like to welcome you to the Eden Prairie Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to call it to order. And I'd like to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, so would everyone please stand and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of
America,
and to the republic
which stands
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. First item of business tonight is the approval of the agenda. Commissioners, does anyone have any comments on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Meddy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Heard Commissioner Kirk first, and the second. All in favor of the agenda, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, unanimously passes. Okay, second on the list is the approval of minutes from the last meeting, which was February 8th, 2021. Does anybody have any comments on those meeting minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the February 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSanctis. Do I hear a second?
I will second it. Bill Gooding.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooding. Second. All in favor of approving the minutes from February 8th, 2021, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have one public hearing this evening. It's for the Chase Bank project. This is a request for planned unit development concept review on 0.61 acres. It's a planned unit development district review with waivers on 0.61 acres, and it's a site plan review on 0.61 acres. The applicant is joining us remotely tonight, and I should also remind everybody who's watching that our planning commission is also split. We have some people here physically in chambers, and we have other commission members that are remotely. So we have a number of virtual and physical attendance this evening. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to, I believe Brian Werdeman is here representing Kimley Horn, the applicant, and we're going to have a short presentation from him. We'll open it up for public comment after that, after maybe a few questions from commissioners, and then we'll have a staff report after that. So Brian, welcome, and the show's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We're here to present proposed Chase Bank redevelopment project.
Okay, hey Brian, excuse me for interrupting right away. We're having a slight audio problem, so we're going to adjust your volume so that we can hear you better. By a show of hands, virtually, commission members that are here virtually, are you hearing the applicant okay, satisfactorily? If you can, raise your hand. Okay, maybe it's just here as us in-house then. We're having little audio problems. I think that's fixed now, Julie?
Brian, can you start us off and see if we can hear you just fine? I don't hear anything. Nope, not yet.
Showing he's talking because his name's lit up.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
he's talking, but we can't hear him yet.
Okay. Brian, stay tuned. We're not getting audio into the council chambers, so just bear with us while we correct an audio problem. Thank you. Mr. Wordman, would you try speaking a few words again now to test the audio?
Sure, good evening.
Oh, this is fantastic. We have your audio volume set properly now. Sorry for that short
Excellent.
delay, and you may proceed with your presentation.
Very good. Can I get confirmation that you're able to see our presentation?
Yes, we see it on our screens, and commission members that are virtual, are you seeing it okay on your screens?
Yeah.
Okay, head nodding all around, Brian. You're green light to go.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, Mr.
I'm here.
Chair and members of the
Feedback.
commission.
Commissioner DeSanctis, you might want to mute your microphone. That might help.
All right.
We are here tonight to present proposed redevelopment of the former Baker Square restaurant into a proposed Chase Bank. This evening you got myself, Brian Werdeman from Kimley Horn. We're the civil engineers on the project, as well as Teron Wright from the Architects Partnership, who's the architect of the project. The site is located at 928 Prairie Center Drive. It's about a 0.6 acre site. It's located immediately east of the Culver's restaurant and west of the Starbucks and three-wheel bike stores. The site's currently zoned commercial and regional service and is guided for regional commercial in the future land use plan. The proposed bank does fit with both of these existing and future land uses. Here you can see the proposed site plan, which reflects the 3,300 square foot bank building with a remote ATM on the east side of the building. The ATM is located here. Access will be provided via a shared private driveway, the existing private driveway off of Plaza Drive, which also allows access for the adjacent businesses in the area. Property and the project proposes 20 parking stalls. There's parking on the south side of the building as well as the north side, with 2 entrances into the bank branch, both the south and the north. Currently, the north drive lane is a one-way circulated driveway. As part of the project, we're proposing to convert that to a 2-way 90-degree parking drive lane, so we will be doing some restriping of the existing one-way parking stalls or anchor parking stalls to the north on the adjacent property. As part of the project, we will be providing enhanced pedestrian connection when compared to the existing Baker Square site. As part of the project, we'll be extending a sidewalk from Plaza Drive up through the parking lot that will allow for access into the bank branch. And additionally, there will be a pedestrian connection from the north side of the bank branch that would connect to a sidewalk adjacent to the Starbucks. Bike racks will be installed near the front entry on the south side of the building. Those are some of the highlights on the proposed redevelopment site plan. Moving on to the grading and drainage plan. This site will have slightly less impervious surface coverage than the existing Baker Square site. Although there's less impervious surface coverage, the project is still required to provide stormwater management to meet the city and watershed requirements. The site will have an underground stormwater system underneath the southern parking lot. That system will collect stormwater runoff from both the proposed bank building and the parking lot. Water will be conveyed to that underground system where water will be stored and used for irrigation reuse. And it'll also be designed to provide the rate, quality, and quantity controls required by the city and watershed. Once stormwater is managed, treated, it'll be discharged to the existing storm sewer within Plaza Drive. Taking a look at the landscape plan for the project, there are some significant trees that are currently located along Plaza Drive. Those 3 trees will be preserved throughout construction and will remain after the project is redeveloped. On site, there is one significant tree, which we will be removing, which we will be mitigating for, and there will be additional caliper inches that will be added to this plan prior to the city council meeting, as discussed in the staff plan report. The project is proposing a number of foundation plantings and plantings throughout the parking areas, increase the aesthetics for the site. All of these areas will be irrigated with the underground stormwater management system, as described previously. With the project and the improvements, redevelopment of the site, there's a number of sustainable items and practices that are being incorporated into the project. The first is the underground stormwater management system. As mentioned, it'll have an irrigation reuse component. It'll provide stormwater rate, quality, and quantity controls, which are not in place with the existing Baker Square site. The on-site lighting will be replaced with LED lights and new fixtures throughout. And then there will be improved pedestrian and bicycle connectivity and enhanced landscaping and improvements when compared to the existing condition. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Teron Wright to go through the building components.
Good evening, all. This is Teron Wright with the Architects Partnership. As Brian mentioned, we are the architect of record for the proposed Chase Bank. For the bank building, we're proposing a 3,300 square foot single-story building. The bank is comprised of 8 offices with a dual entry, entrance off the north and the south. For the building components, the exterior cladding is made up of Class 1 materials, so basically brick stone. We are seeking a waiver request for the aluminum composite panels on the north and west facades. Sorry, south and west facades, which that makes up a very small percentage of the proposed Class 2 material. Overall, mechanical equipment will be screened. We are proposing a low roof, so mechanical equipment will not be visible from the street. In addition, we are proposing a single-story drive-up ATM canopy. It's an independent structure that will have signage branded onto it. All electrical equipment will be attached to the east facade along with the attached trash enclosure. The intent is to screen that mechanical equipment screen the electrical equipment from view with landscaping elements. With that, I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Teron? And with that, I will turn it back over to Julie for the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wardeman, and thank you, Mr. Wright. So commissioners, we have two people representing the applicant. They're the architect and the civil engineer. Would any of the commissioners like to ask the applicant any questions about the project at this time? Commissioner Meddy.
I have a question for, I guess the architect, it could be either, but are the doors on both the north and south intended for public access and open during business hours, or is one more of an employee entrance?
Yes, there will be a open procedure door for employees, but overall, both doors will remain open throughout the business hours.
Okay, thanks.
Any other commissioners wish to address the applicant at this time?
Mr. Commissioner, I have a question.
Commissioner Sanctus.
The aluminum composite panels, it indicated in the memorandum that they were long-standing. Was that engineer certified? And are we looking at a 20-year life, 25-year life, 30-year life? Can you be more specific about the durability of the panels?
The ACM panels are anticipated for a 20-year lifespan. I can provide the manufacturer's information to Julie if necessary.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? I have one myself, probably for the architect. There seems to be an overabundance of accessible parking stalls for the small building. I think we're all in favor of full accessibility for the community, our residents and employees, users of retail facilities, but there are 4 when only 1 is required, and I understand that there might be a shortage of green space or trees rather from the staff report. Can you talk about the preference to have 4 accessible parking stalls as opposed to more green space?
I would say at a minimum, we would prefer to have at least 1 parking stall at each one accessible parking stall at each entrance. So there is some flexibility to reduce down if necessary.
Is there a preference because of your business nature that you think 4 would be an appropriate number for your business?
Typical bank, we would provide at a minimum 2 accessible parking stalls.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you, applicants. This is a public hearing, and staff report. You first. Okay, sorry. We're going to go to the staff report first, then we'll open it up for public comment. I'm sorry. Julie, would you like to issue your staff report to us?
Yes, sir. As the applicant stated, they are requesting approval of a PUD concept review, a PUD with waivers, and site plan review this evening. The proposed use is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan as well as permitted uses within the zoning district. The site does comply with all parking, setback, building height, parking setback requirements of the underlying zoning district. The only waiver that is being requested is with regard to Class 1 building materials. Code requires Class 1 materials to be used at the ground floor, and they do have a small percentage that is Class 2 materials. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, it's only 2.5% of those 2 facades, so it's not 4 facades, it's only 2. The remainder of the building is Class 1 material, which far exceeds that 75% minimum. Staff is recommending approval of the waiver and approval of the site plan as presented in your staff report. The applicant did speak to the tree removal and the need to address that prior to first reading at council. That is a condition that is in your staff report. There are several ways that adjustment could be made. It could be made by adding a tree, could be made by increasing the size of the trees that are proposed to be planted, and that would make up that difference from what is currently in the plan. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Julie. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Meddy.
I always have a question for Julie. Class 1 materials, I feel like I'm asking this a lot, but it really didn't occur to me until this project that the metal panel wasn't a Class 1. Do you, and you might not be able to answer this, but do you have any background on, you know, why metal panel was not, you know, considered Class 1? Any history there?
Yes, I do. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so back in, I believe it was 2016, when the city was looking at updating its design guidelines and building material requirements, the city council and planning commission put a substantial amount of work into doing visual surveys, looking at buildings, what do we like, what do we don't like, in order to determine what changes they wanted to make to the building material and architectural requirements. There was as I recall, a very robust conversation about metal and whether or not that should be included as a Class 1 material. And at that time, the consensus was, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, so the consensus was that while the Planning Commission and City Council weren't opposed to the use of metal, they weren't quite ready to go to the point to say, yes, we're going to count it as a Class 1 and allow it at a rate of 75% by right. Understanding that if somebody wanted to include metal at more than that, say 25% or on the ground floor, that there was always a process for them to be able to do that by going through this PUD waiver process. And it would allow the Planning Commission and City Council an opportunity to review what is proposed as a part of individual projects.
Okay, thank you for that Thank you for the background. One other quick question on the recommendation for the caliper inches. Is the recommendation to increase either add a tree or increase the two trees by 2 inches? Is that then make this project meet the requirement, or does that just make up a little bit?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, if the applicant either adds the tree or adds a couple of inches to the existing trees, that would meet the requirement.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions of staff at this point in time? I have a quick one then for Mr. Rue. Noticed on the utility plan that the applicant is proposing off-site utility runs on the east side, kind of on the Starbucks side. The gas and communications lines are running off their property line purposefully, it appears. Was that a suggestion of staff, or is that okay by a city? And you're muted right now, Mr. Rue. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I did notice that on the plan. And we did not have an issue with it as long as they have permission to do it. I would like to ask probably the applicant why they're doing it, because I don't, there's not a clear understanding from our perspective of why they're doing it. It looks like from my review that the drainage on that drive aisle outside the ATM kind of drains toward the Starbucks. So maybe they're just picking that up, picking that drainage up based on discussion with the adjacent property. But as long as they have permission to do it, I guess we don't have an issue with it.
Okay, thanks. We'll circle back to the applicant with that same question then in a minute. And then right underneath those utilities on the east side, there's a driveway that has the whole shopping center circulation running north-south, kind of between the Starbucks and this site. And there's a construction fence that's closing that off temporarily during construction while still allowing access for the Starbucks drive-through. Is there any concern of yours or the fire department that that closure of vehicular access for the center is in any way compromising safety or other issues?
We would want to see to make sure that there is a bypass plan or a way to get traffic through there. My guess is that there is probably a one-day closure of when they put that storm sewer in. But other than that, it doesn't look like they're changing grades or anything like that that's significant. I would just assume that they would be bypassing traffic and detouring traffic around that area.
All right, very good. Julie, did you want to add to that? No? Okay. Commissioners, any more questions of staff? Seeing none, if I could just invite the applicant back into the conversation for a minute, and maybe address the question of off-site utilities on the east side, Brian?
Sure, Mr. Chair. The utilities on the east side of the building, we are proposing storm that will on the adjacent property to the east as part of our coordination with the watershed to mitigate for those areas on this property which are unobtainable to get to the underground stormwater system. The adjacent property to the east is owned by the same entity that owns this Baker Square restaurant today. So we have been in coordination with, call it the off-property improvements with the same common owner. As far as other utilities, the intent is to connect and extend those utilities into the building from the location in which they currently serve the Baker Square.
Great, thank you so much for the clarification. Okay. This is a public hearing. And we don't have anybody in council chambers physically right here, and I don't know if we have anybody virtually. I don't think we do. Therefore, I'm going to leap to the assumption that we do not have any public comment. I see no hands in the audience and nobody online. So,
Commissioner Farr, I do have one other question for Mr. Werdeman.
sure, Commissioner DeSantis, go ahead.
It's a three-part question. In the actual construction of the new building, do you anticipate any environmental hazards? Number two, will there be the use of recycled materials for the actual construction and a plan for recycling the deconstructed materials?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's a very good question. We have completed a phase one environmental site assessment for the project. There was an adjacent business that previously operated as a dry cleaner. There is currently ongoing investigation as to a second phase to that environmental site assessment. That's still underway, and we'll continue to work with city staff as we're nearing construction on the project to ensure that we're providing any environmentally sensitive information to staff in the building department through that process. As far as the recycled material on site, at this point, we have not considered reusing the material. We may still evaluate that, but haven't gotten to that level of detail with the contractor yet.
Commissioner DeSantis, did he answer all your questions satisfactorily?
The third piece was the recycling of the materials deconstructed. Now, I assume you've analyzed the existing materials in that structure for Baker Square. What would be your general plan based on two prior openings in Richfield and West St. Paul? What did you do with the deconstructed materials?
Jerron, do you have any information on the way that those existing buildings were taken down and recycled?
Sure. For Richfield and West St. Paul, West St. Paul was a greenfield site and Richfield was a parking lot. So we didn't have to deal with the deconstructed materials as an existing condition.
Commissioner DeSantis, you satisfied?
That's a sufficient answer for me. Julie, does this raise any questions for you?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, from a zoning code standpoint, it does not raise any concerns.
All right, thank you. we're to that point, I think, where I can entertain a motion to close the public hearings so we can deliberate further. Would anybody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. We have a motion to close the public hearing. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSantis. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Public hearing is closed. Okay, Commissioners, deliberative comments, please. Who'd like to start? Commissioner Meddy.
I always have comments. A few things. I like your idea, Mr. Chair, on the idea of removing one handicap stall. I think that it could pick up additional landscaping in the northwest corner of the site, where there's currently shown that tree to be removed, potentially making it able to either save that tree or plant a tree there in order to meet the landscaping requirements. So I am in favor of that idea. With regards to the metal, my thoughts here are, as we know, this is not a Class 1 material identified by the city. It's a common use throughout the Twin Cities, but I think given sort of Eden Prairie's desire to have really high quality buildings, I'd like to ask the applicant to, rather than have a composite metal, to do solid metal like a zinc or a copper, something high quality and longer term. I've done this before on some buildings here in the Twin Cities with the zinc material that looks almost identical to, but nicer actually than the composite materials. So I think that would be, I would suggest that as a compromise to allowing that variance by requiring a higher end material. Given the size, it's only 130 square feet. I think that would be a very minimal cost for the developer because there's so little square feet of it. Another thing I'd just like to note as a comment, I didn't quite see an exact detail I could have been missing, but the trash gate, I do like that the trash enclosure is built with the building, the cast stone. I think that makes it look a lot nicer and isn't going to be like an eyesore, but I think since that gate is essentially visible from the front of the property, that we should take care of confirming the exact design and paint color and really make that blend in and not create a sore thumb there. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Meddy. Appreciate that. Anybody else have some comments?
Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Yes, Commissioner.
With respect to the landscaping and the discussion about the compensatory caliber increase,
Yes.
caliper increase for the trees, when you look at the northwest corner of the existing building, I think it's a basswood tree that's encroaching very, very much on the northwest corner of the actual structure. And given the limitations and degrees of freedom in terms of paving, and I assume this new building will have a similar footprint, I'm wondering about how that would be realistic, and also for the developer to really look at the type of tree species that would work best in a very tight encroached space, such as exists on the northwest side.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else like to offer a few suggestions, opinions, comments?
Sure.
Commissioner Kirk.
I usually have some comments. First off, I'd just like to clarify the material that Commissioner Medday suggested as a substitute. Is that, Julie, is that a Class 1 material?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, no, that would still be a Class 2 material.
Okay. Just to kind of phrase my perspective on this, we've run into this a number of times before, where we're looking at a company's design standards as they come into our community, and how can we mesh the company's design characteristics, which I think this material that they're suggesting is an important part of, with the community standards that we have, and you know, it's kind of an interpretive call in my mind, or a personal perspective. And in this case, if my architect colleagues, construction colleagues I'd like to hear some other opinions on their view of the composite anodized aluminum material. My background happens to be as an aluminum metallurgist, so I have no problem with anodized aluminum and its use, but I don't have any experience in the construction industry for that. So I would love to hear those who have been in the industry and watch the durability of potentially that material being used, their opinions, because frankly, I'm leaning towards allowing Chase to use that material. It's a small enough percentage to me, and I do remember, I think, Julie's accurate description of the discussions we had a number of years ago when we were setting those standards. It wasn't a, hell no, we don't want that material. It was a, yeah, we're not ready to put it as a blank check, but we're willing to consider it. So I'm in that mode of willing to consider it when we're talking about, 1.25% of the total area of all four sides of the building. So I'd love to hear Commissioner Farr, Commissioner Gooding, Commissioner Marcos, if you guys have, those in the construction industry. Commissioner Meddy obviously has spoken her opinion, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. I can say a few words about that myself. Before I do, are there any other commissioner comments? Like to say a few words about the project? All right. I'll take a stab at that real quick. As an architect, I kind of divide architectural metals on facades of buildings into three categories. Solid metal plate, as Commissioner Meddy explained, these ACM or MCM products, which stands for aluminum composite materials or metal composite materials. And then the third is just plain old single sheet metal. Going backwards, the sheet metal has a performance characteristic of deformation. You can make it wobble. It's called oil canning. It's generally considered undesirable. So it has to be held down on a stable substrate, and those are used for minor pieces of architectural trim and flashings where the deformation is not noticeable, not on a large facade typically. But we do see it on some projects, large metal panels that are just single sheet metal, and those have to be carefully considered. As the architect pointed out, this ACM product, aluminum composite material, is what I would consider also sturdy material. Any face of aluminum will certainly dent if impacted with something sharp or heavy. So I probably wouldn't use it next to a sidewalk where snow shovels or snow blowers might be in contact with it. In this particular application, it's in a landscaped area, so I don't think it's subject to the impact concerns that I would have. It being a sandwich product, it's either coming in a 4 millimeter or 6 millimeter thickness typically. Again, very durable. And if one was concerned about durability, as some people that I've heard this evening may be expressing, it can be ordered in that different thickness, upgrade to a 6 millimeter thickness instead of a 4 millimeter thickness. That would take care of it. Solid plate metals, again, increase in durability somewhat. They are somewhat more dent resistant. They're definitely more expensive, and mostly deforming resistant as well. I would not differentiate between plate metal and ACM or MCM, as it's called, in terms of on the scale of durability. I am perfectly fine with the ACM. I think it's a high-class architectural material and is very appropriate for this type of building, especially when it's away from a public sidewalk exposure. So that's the part of answer for Commissioner
Appreciate the
Kirk.
education.
No problem. Personally, on my opinion about the project, I really appreciate the applicant's design of having four-sided architecture. while I've also considered the south-facing building towards Plaza Drive to be the front, their creation of a second front facing north really invites users of this shopping center to engage with this business in a fantastic way. I like the way they've added circulation over to the Starbucks on the east, so that there can be some people who walk back and forth up and down this shopping center without having to get back on their car and drive to a different parking lot. So I think it's a pedestrian enhancement, as well as just really inviting for those people that are already in the center, further to the north, being able to walk into that north elevation. So I really like that. I agree with Commissioner Meddy's comment, and I think it was Commissioner DeSantis also who agreed about the maybe additional green space or place to plant a tree if we were to suggest to the applicant they would relax the accessible parking count, pick up maybe 150, 120 square feet for that. I don't think I'm going to make it a condition of approval, but I think it's just something for them to think about as they plan their strategy for council on how to satisfy the landscape tree replacement ordinance. That's all I have to say about it. Anybody else have some comments? Commissioner Gooding.
Yes, in reviewing the project, I thought it was very well done. I looked at the composite metal use. My experience, and particularly in the areas using it, is I think it's a very satisfactory product. I think it would look well, hold up well. It's not in an area where it's subject to abuse, as you so nicely pointed out. The parking, it's interesting. The trade-off between added green space and the parking, I struggle with that. I think the bank should. I don't know that I would be comfortable doing away with a parking spot, in this case, to add a tree. I think I'd rather see them add larger trees where they put it, or do something different with the landscaping. But I think retaining the parking as drawn, and even with the added handicap space, you can't go wrong with that. So those are my opinions.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooding. Anyone else? Good conversations.
This is Commissioner Marcus. Just a couple thoughts on the work that's been done in the pavement over by the culvers. I know there's some pavers and or maybe it's colored concrete. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I'm just wondering if the developers thought or looked at that and kind of incorporating that design, carrying that through over towards their development as they're rebuilding this. I do think it added some nice features with a minimal work that was put into that pavement change, and just thought any creative ways of making this very pedestrian, even more pedestrian friendly. I think that the overall building updates are going to be wonderful for that space. It is a big parking lot, and with culvers and all this, I think it really does improve that whole shopping area and that experience. But just something to think about with the culvers being so new and that development they did with their pavement, if there's any updating that kind of brings that through to make it more cohesive.
Good comments. Thank you, Commissioner Marcos. I appreciate that. Commissioner Meddy?
I want to second what Commissioner Marcos just suggested. I think that's actually a great idea. It helps kind of make sense of that walkway there and tying it into other locations of the site. One, concern I have a little bit with the pedestrian crossing on the south side is people whipping in to Starbucks in the morning, late for work. I mean, I'm sure I would be one of them, to either leaving or coming in super fast. So as people come around that first corner, want to make sure that pedestrian crosswalk is very visible. So whatever needs to be done, I think, to make sure that is well easy to see from the drivers coming in and out, potentially fast, on or off caffeine.
Well said. My observation, it's interesting you mentioned about the crosswalk, and Commissioner Marcos, I appreciate you starting this conversation. Driving up and down Plaza Drive, all of the driveways there are servicing not only this shopping center, but businesses further east, including the car dealership and the hardware store, et cetera. They really have wide entrance driveways. Some of them are split driveways to separate inbound and outbound traffic with a narrow traffic island for just for queuing of cars. And it seems to me that as we talk about pedestrian safety, that sidewalk that's along the north side of Plaza Drive really is a challenge to walk that sidewalk and hurry across those extra wide driveways on such a busy retail street like Plaza Drive. So I think there might be a greater risk there than actually when people have turned in off of Plaza Drive and are within the development and hopefully lower their rate of speed on or off caffeine within a certain development. I don't think the city has a requirement for crosswalks across driveways, although I think it was a topic of conversation 2 years ago for the Starbucks on the opposite side of town at Preserve Village. I recall there was a conversation about crosswalks across that extra wide driveway. So I don't think we need to get into the weeds about policy in this meeting, but those comments are well noted, and maybe a topic for future conversation about just city policy on wide driveways at retail projects.
Commissioner Farr, I want to add a few comments relative to crosswalks.
Go ahead,
and
Commissioner
pedestrians and visibility and safety factors. That strip of commercial outlets to the northeast of the building, I'm not aware that there's a sharply defined crosswalk that would allow people to transit from that strip mall over to the new north entrance. And when you look at the typical day of commerce in that shopping complex, people are going in and out constantly. And again, I'm concerned about making an assumption that it's going to be a safe transit for people to migrate from that strip mall over to the north side or the north entrance of the bank.
I may need clarity on your comment, Commissioner DeSanctis. The applicant is proposing a striped crosswalk from the north facade of the bank project over to the Starbucks strip center portion of the greater shopping complex. Is that what you're inferring, that there was no?
No, a little bit further north than that. There should be multiple crosswalks across that lane of traffic leading to the bank.
Oh, all right, even though that's not their parking lot.
Well, again, this is a secondary effect of putting the bank in and having a north side entrance.
Sure.
About encouraging people. You were talking about encouraging people from the north and the
Yes.
east end commercial area to migrate over to the bank. I don't think it's a very pedestrian friendly milieu there in that parking lot, period.
All right, thank
Even
you.
with the crosswalks.
Sure. Thank you for that clarification. I personally am a fan of getting people out of their car and walking towards a sidewalk for safety first, and then circulating perhaps around the perimeter of a site for safety purposes before having to cross another driveway. So I'm not a big fan of having crosswalks in the middle of a parking lot for people to take shortcuts from aisle to aisle to aisle and duck between cars. That's just personal, but it's probably good design practice as well. But your point's well taken for pedestrian circulation. All right, well, I think those were all good tips. The applicant has been listening. I didn't hear anything necessarily that rose to the level of having a condition of approval here. So I'll just ask one more time if any commissioners have any other comments. And if not, I am open to a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Kirk.
move to approve for a planned unit development concept review on 0.61 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 0.61 acres and a site plan review on 0.61 acres based on plans stamped dated March 3rd, 2021, and the staff report dated March 8th, 2021.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Kirk. Would anybody like to second that motion?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSantis. Appreciate that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a roll call vote on this. So as I call your name, please give me your approval with an aye or lack of approval with a nay. Commissioner DeSantis.
Aye.
Commissioner Gooding.
Aye.
Commissioner Higgins. You are on mute. You're on mute, Commissioner Higgins. I tell you what, if you're unable to unmute yourself, I'll take a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay, for the record, I see a thumbs up from Commissioner Higgins. Commissioner Marcos.
Aye.
Commissioner Kirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Marcos.
Ready?
I'm sorry. Commissioner Meddy.
Aye.
Okay, and Vice Chair Farr, aye. The vote is unanimous, aye. Congratulations, the motion passes. And good luck on your project, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And thank you for the presentation. Yep. All right. Let's see, next on the agenda are planners' reports. I don't think we have any planners' reports, or do we?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just an update on Planning Commission appointments for the upcoming year. So the City Council just recently held the interviews for potential candidates. We had 3 seats that were up for discussion: Commissioner Meddy's seat, Commissioner Farr's seat, and the seat vacated by Lisa Toomey, who was elected to the City Council. Both Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Meddy were reappointed to the commission for another 3-year terms, and a gentleman by the name of Robert Taylor was appointed to the vacant seat that remained. He was appointed also for a 3-year term, and Andrew Piper and Ed Farr were chair and vice chair selected, or appointments rather, by the council. So just an update for you, those new terms and new seats begin April 1st.
Great. Thank you for that update, Julie. We look forward to welcoming Mr. Taylor onto the commission as soon as he is able to join us. All right, members' reports. Does anybody have a members' report tonight? All right, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from someone.
I'll make a motion. This is Marcus.
Thank you, Commissioner Marcos. Do I have a second?
I will second, Mr. Gooding.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooding. All in favor to adjourn? In favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Good evening.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
great night.
bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.